Chapter 2. The origin. The bird was dying. Elias stood in his grandmother's kitchen, watching it through the window above the sink. It was a house sparrow, unremarkable in every way, a kind of bird that nested in the eaves and fought over breadcrumbs and filled the mornings with its insistent, meaningless chirping. It had flown into the glass, a sound like a stone hitting a window pane. And now it lay on the wooden deck, one wing splayed at an impossible angle, its breast rising and falling in quick, panicked gasps. Elias was 9 years old. He was small for his age, with knobby knees and wrists that seemed too thin to support his hands. His hair was the color of sand, and his eyes were the color of slate, and he had a habit of staring at things for too long, of fixing his gaze on a single point and refusing to look away. His teachers found this unsettling. His parents found it strange. His grandmother, who was the only person in the world who seemed to understand him, found it endearing. He had found the bird 30 seconds after it hit the glass. He had been helping his grandmother wash the dishes, standing on a step stool so he could reach the sink, and he had seen the flash of brown and gray, heard the thud, watched the bird fall to the deck like a stone. He had said nothing. He had simply stared, his hands still in the soapy water, his gaze fixed on the small, dying creature. "Elias," his grandmother said. "What is it, dear?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. He was transfixed. The bird was dying. He could see it dying. He could see the quick flutter of its heart, the desperate rise and fall of its chest, the way its beak opened and closed as if it were trying to speak. He could see the fear in its tiny black eyes, the fear that was as real and as palpable as the fear he had felt the night his father had come home drunk and thrown a lamp against the wall. The bird was dying, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. "Elias?" his grandmother said again. She came up behind him, her small hands on his shoulders, her voice gentle and warm. "Elias, what's wrong?" He pointed. His finger was trembling. He was not a boy who trembled. He was a boy who was always calm, always composed, always in control. But he was trembling now. "The bird," he said. His voice was a whisper. "The bird is dying." His grandmother looked out the window. She was a small woman, round and soft, with gray hair pulled back in a bun, and a face that had been weathered by years of hard work and harder loss. She had buried 3 children. She had buried her husband. She had buried her parents and her grandparents and most of her friends. She had seen more death than any person should have to see, and she had survived it all with a grace that Elias could not fathom. She looked at the bird. She looked at Elias. She knelt beside him, her knees cracking with the effort, and she took his face in her hands. "Elias," she said, "look at me." He looked at her. Her eyes were the color of honey, and they were kind, and they were sad, and they were full of something that he could not name. "The bird is dying," she said. "Do you know why?" He shook his head. He was afraid to speak. He was afraid that if he spoke, he would cry, and he was not supposed to cry. He was supposed to be strong. He was supposed to be a man, even though he was only 9 years old. "The bird flew into the glass," his grandmother said. "It was trying to get somewhere. It was trying to get to the other side. It didn't know the glass was there. It thought it could fly through. It was trying to reach the other side, and it couldn't." Elias looked back at the window. The glass was clean and clear, a perfect barrier between the kitchen and the deck. The bird had been trying to reach the other side, and it had failed. "Is it going to die?" he asked. "Yes," his grandmother said. "It's going to die. Is there anything we can do?" "No, dear. There's nothing we can do." He stared at the bird. Its struggles were slowing now. Its chest was rising and falling less frequently. Its eyes were still open, still full of fear, but there was something else in them now. Something that looked almost like resignation. "Does it hurt?" he asked. "I don't know," his grandmother said. "I think it might, but the pain won't last much longer. Will it go to heaven?" His grandmother paused. She was a religious woman who believed in God and afterlife, and that every soul, no matter how small, would find its way to a better place. But she looked at Elias, at the intensity in his slate-gray eyes, at the seriousness of his small, thin face, and she did not give him the answer he expected. "I don't know," she said. "I don't think so. I think it will just stop." She said this with a gentleness that was almost unbearable. She said this with a kindness that he would remember for the rest of his life. She said this, and he heard something in her voice that he had never heard before, something that sounded like acceptance. He looked at the bird. It had stopped moving. Its eyes were still open, but they were empty now, empty in a way that he had never seen before. The bird was dead. He watched it for a long time. He watched how the wind ruffled its feathers, and how the sun crawled across its small, broken body. And he felt something shift inside him, something that he would not understand for many years. He was 9 years old, and he had just learned that the world was not kind, and that the world was not fair, and that the only thing that was certain was the end. He did not tell his parents about the bird. He did not tell them because they would not understand. His father would tell him to stop being soft. His mother would tell him that he was too sensitive, too serious, too much like his grandmother. They would look at him with their worried eyes, and they would try to comfort him, and they would fail. He had learned, by the age of 9, that his parents were not capable of comfort. His father was a man who had never been comforted, who had been raised by a father who believed that emotions were a weakness, who had grown into a man who believed the same. He was a good man in his way. He worked hard. He provided for his family. He never hit his wife or his children, but he was incapable of tenderness, incapable of warmth, incapable of the kind of gentle, simple love that Elias craved. His mother was different. She was capable of love. She was capable of tenderness, but she was also capable of something else. Something darker, something that Elias did not understand until he was much older. She was capable of despair. His mother was a woman who had been born sad. He did not know this, not consciously. He knew only that she cried in the mornings, sometimes over her coffee. He knew only that she spent long hours staring out the window, her hands still, her face empty. He knew only that she was not like other mothers, that she did not laugh the way other mothers laughed, that she did not play the way other mothers played. His mother was a woman who had been born sad, and she had passed that sadness on to her children. He saw it in himself sometimes, the weight of it, the heaviness, the sense that the world was too much, too bright, too loud, too full of pain. He saw it in his sister too, though she was still too young to understand. He saw it in the way she laughed, too loud, too bright, as if she were trying to compensate for something, as if she were trying to drown out the silence. His mother was a woman who had been born sad, and she had tried to hide it, and she had failed. The memory of the bird stayed with him. It stayed with him through the long gray winters of his childhood. It stayed with him through the summers, the hot, sticky summers when he would sit on the steps of his grandmother's house and watch the cars go by and wonder where they were going. It stayed with him through his adolescence, when he discovered philosophy and felt for the first time that someone else had been looking through the same window at the same gray world. He read Schopenhauer when he was 16. He found a copy of The World as Will and Representation in a used bookstore. The spine cracked, the pages yellowed, the margins filled with the annotations of a previous reader. He took it home and read it in a single night, and when he finished, he felt something he had never felt before. He felt understood. Schopenhauer wrote about the will, the endless, pointless striving, the hunger that could never be satisfied, the desire that could never be fulfilled, the pain that was the only constant, the only certainty, the only truth. He wrote about the world as a place of suffering, a place where happiness was a fleeting illusion, a place where the only escape was to renounce the will, to turn away from the world, to find peace in the acceptance of nothingness. Elias read these words, and he wept. He wept for the sparrow that had broken its neck against the window pane. He wept for his mother, who had been born sad and would die sad. He wept for himself, for the weight that he had carried since childhood, the weight that he had never been able to name. He wept, and he felt something shift inside him, something that felt almost like relief. He had found his answer. The argument came to him slowly. It came to him over years of reading and thinking and arguing. It came to him in the classrooms of the best universities, where he debated his professors and his peers. It came to him in the pages of the books he wrote, the books that made him famous, the books that made him hated. The argument was simple. It was elegant. It was irrefutable. It was this: the world is a place of suffering. This is not a matter of opinion. This is a matter of fact. Every life contains pain. Every life contains loss. Every life contains the certainty of death. And yet we continue to create new lives. We bring children into the world, knowing full well that they will suffer. We gamble with their lives, their happiness, their peace. We take a risk that is not ours to take. This is wrong. This is a moral wrong. We have no right to create a being that will suffer. We have no right to impose existence on a being that did not ask for it. We have no right to gamble with the life of another. The only way to prevent suffering is to prevent life. The only way to guarantee peace is to guarantee non-existence. The only way to be kind is to refuse to create. This was the argument. It was simple, it was elegant, it was irrefutable. And yet, when he looked at his sister's face, when he saw the joy in her eyes, the joy she felt for her children, the joy she felt for her life, he could not say the words. He could not tell her that her happiness was an illusion. He could not tell her that her children would suffer. He could not tell her that she had made a mistake, a terrible mistake, a mistake that would haunt her for the rest of her life. He could not say the words because he loved her. The memory of the bird came back to him now. He was 45 years old and dying, sitting in his study, looking at the blank screen of his laptop, trying to find the words to write to his sister. He thought about the sparrow, about its tiny, terrified eyes, and the way its chest had risen and fallen, quicker and quicker, until it stopped. He thought about his grandmother, and the kindness in her voice when she told him the truth, and the way she had held him, the way she had let him cry. He had not cried that day. He had not cried for the sparrow. He had stood in his grandmother's kitchen, watching the bird die, and he had felt something harden inside him, something that had never fully softened. He had become a philosopher because he needed to understand. He needed to understand why the bird had died, why his mother was sad, and why the world was the way it was. He had found his answers. He had found his arguments, and he had built a life around them. And now he was dying, and he could not write a letter to his sister. He opened the drawer of his desk and took out the photograph, and he looked at his sister's face, at the gap in her teeth, at the unself-conscious joy that radiated from her small body. He remembered the day the photograph had been taken. It was a summer afternoon. He was 9. She was 7. Their grandmother had taken them to the park, the one with the pond and the ducks and the old man who sold ice cream from a cart. He had been reading. He was always reading. He had been reading a book about dinosaurs, a book with pictures of bones and fossils and the skeletons of creatures that had died millions of years ago. He had been so absorbed in the book that he hadn't noticed his sister approaching. She had taken the book from his hands and thrown it into the pond. He had been furious and screamed at her and called her names, and he had chased her around the park, his fists clenched, his face red with rage. She had laughed. She had laughed and laughed, her gap-toothed grin wide and bright, her eyes sparkling with mischief. And then she had stopped. She had looked at him, her face suddenly serious. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to make you angry. I just wanted you to play with me." He had not forgiven her. Not right away. He had stomped off to find his grandmother, to tell her what had happened, to demand that his sister be punished. But she had followed him. She had taken his hand. She had led him back to the pond, where the book was floating, waterlogged and ruined. "I'm sorry," she said again. "I'll buy you a new one." He had looked at her. He had seen the sincerity in her eyes, the earnestness, the desperate need to be forgiven. He had seen the love, too, the simple, uncomplicated love of a child for her brother. And he had forgiven her. He had pulled her into a hug, held her tight, felt her small body against his, felt the warmth of her, the life of her. He had felt for a moment that the world was not such a bad place after all. He put the photograph back in the drawer, closed the drawer, and looked at the blank screen of his laptop. He had spent his entire life arguing against the joy he had felt in that moment, that the world was a place of suffering, that happiness was an illusion, that the only honest response was to turn away. He had been right. He knew he had been right. The world was a place of suffering. Happiness was an illusion. The only honest response was to turn away. But he had been wrong, too. He had been wrong to think that the joy was meaningless, that the love was a trap, and that the only way to protect his sister was to push her away. He had been wrong, and now he was dying, and he had no time left to make it right. He started to type. "My dear Clara," he wrote, "I am writing to you because I am dying. I have 2 months to live, and I have spent the last 3 years pretending that you do not exist. This was a mistake." He stopped. He read what he had written. It was the same letter he had written the night before, the same raw, honest, vulnerable letter. He did not delete it this time.